This week's show brought to you by Peter, who apparently will not be listening. Welcome back to another Boxscore Geeks show. I'm your host, Dre Alvarez, aka Nerd Numbers, and as always, we are produced by the amazing, the immaculate, I can't think of any more adjectives, Brian. I'm so very tired. But the amazing box score, Brian, our own voice of God, Brian Foster. Give a shout out, Brian.
Yeah, boy, I've got a rant to start this show, Dre. It's NBA Finals. We're going to talk about the games, but just everything I've been reading lately and seeing on the internet about these finals are funny to me. So
I'm very excited because candidly, I kind of phase in and out. And as I announced last week's show, expecting a new kid on the way. If you're going to get sick of hearing that, 'cause we're only 2 weeks into me having announced it, I'm going to give you a fair warning. I'm probably not going to stop talking about it. It's probably going to get worse as we go on, but don't worry. I'll keep it basketball related, I hope. Anyway, so Brian, I'm going to Kobe the ball and do two things. As mentioned, this show is brought to you by, I believe, Peter. I didn't even check the comments name, who complained that we have allowed Ding to start the show. We may actually look into new intro music for the show. We love feedback from the fans. We're not big enough that we don't not want to encourage you to give your feedback. We love our loyal listeners. But as Brian pointed out pre-show, we were discussing this. Be nice about it because we love you guys. But we do this as a hobby, so be nice about it. So
to be fair, I think he was being nice about it. It's just his
No,
tactics.
he was not. No, don't backpedal. I was so sorry to steal the ball from you again, Brian. Brian and I, a little behind the scenes, not finals related at all. Sorry, listeners. We occasionally have differences of opinions about dealing with comment sections. Brian tends to be more voice of reason. He wants to go in and listen. I kind of just shrug my shoulders and move along. So I was so excited, Brian, to actually see you a little riled at someone being a little entitled in the comments because you do such good work for the show that, you know.
That's why I put it. He was nice, but he was entitled. So anyway, we'll see what happens with the intro music. If anyone else really thinks it's that ping is too loud, we'll get rid of it. But it's from Zelda 2, right, Dre? That's why we have it in there. It's awesome.
It is. I'm actually okay. I'm getting new intro music, working with that a little. But yeah, the same thing when you're dealing anything for free on the internet, you always have to kind of be a little. It's funny to see the entitlement, or when people spend very little. Like that always amuses me when someone spends like $2 for something, and they're like, "Oh my God, how come it's not more amazing?" It's like you spent $2. It's $2. Like, come on.
Anyway, that's fine. That's the way of the internet.
Anyway, I want to play my quick little game, Brian, before we get in. This is actually an easy one. We don't have Patrick this week. He is, as I mentioned, he's our Chris Paul this playoff season. He broke his leg, not broke his leg. He strained or tore something in his leg early on in the playoff season. Now he's down with sickness. He just cannot stay on the court. We're never going to the finals, Brian. That's just the answer.
Yeah, that's true.
But
Get
anyway,
well soon, Patrick.
I don't want any spoilers, but last week I did a game which was Game of Thrones or NBA playoffs. So a few weeks ago we were comparing the amazing Hold the Door episode of Game of Thrones, and basically the week after that we basically said the NBA playoffs were more exciting than Game of Thrones. And I'm curious, this last week, I'm not talking about this upcoming week, Brian. This last week, what do you rank higher, the NBA playoffs or Game of Thrones?
Oh, Game of Thrones, way higher.
Really?
Oh, episode 7 was one of the best ever.
Are you kidding me?
The Hound makes his return. Clegane Bowl. It's fucking confirmed. Get hyped, Dre. The Hound will fight the Mountain. It is confirmed.
Okay, I don't want to waste too much more time. That was such a Dragon Ball Z episode in that, it was obviously setting up a lot of cool stuff coming. There was one, I don't want to spoil it, so let's not talk about that. We'll talk next week if the cool stuff that I think happens with it happens. There was one cool oh my God moment in last week's episode of Game of Thrones, but I got to buy, the 2 back-to-back blowouts in the NBA playoffs. I would have assumed you would have ranked higher, but what do
The
I know?
Blackfish made his return. This is the Blackfish, the hero of the, Nine Penny Kings War. Come on, Dre. He put Jamie in his place. What a great episode.
I'm going to say this. This is Brian, our resident Golden State Warriors fan, who has it. I'm going to let you start the show with a rant. Well, I don't even know start the show. This is like the headline act now. Headline the show with your rant about the playoffs, and you are ranking Game of Thrones above it. I am shocked, utterly shocked. All right, so let's get into your rant. You've got several. I'm just gonna let you go ahead, and we're just gonna go through the playoffs, maybe talk games. We'll see where we end up.
Yeah, I mean, the Warriors win the finals every year, so game ball only happens once, Dre. Get hype. Okay, so yeah, before we talk about these games, man, I don't know where this term came from, small sample size theater. We say all the time. I think you invented it, or Patrick, or somebody, but yeah, I mean, the takes that the media has after each, well, I guess it's after games 1 and 2, right? Which are very different from game 3. And everyone is just all over the place with with all these takes. Like, it's jumping to conclusions is what it is. So after games 1 and 2,
Did you get like I won't get time to do this, Brian, but are you thinking like Office Space, the jump to conclusions, Matt? Someone
it
needs
is
to
a
make
jump
one
to
of those for the
conclusions, Matt.
playoffs.
Yeah, send one of those to Bristol because man, ESPN, it's unbelievable. After games 1 and 2, LeBron looks old. He's finished. He's not playing well anymore. And also, LeBron, the GM, is awful. He's constructed this terrible team. We need to hire a real GM for the Cavs, not LeBron. They were just finished. Everything was done, right? And that's funny to me because first off, it's just 2 games, and it's 2 road games against one of the best teams of all time, right? So just think about all the possible outcomes there could have been for those 2 games. Maybe the Warriors winning both games closely was more expected, but I'd say the Cavs getting blown out twice was one of the much more expected results
Well,
ever.
what shocked me, because I pointed this out earlier, that if you looked at the Thunder, the Warriors, and the Spurs, those 3 teams who were the top 3 teams in the NBA this season, and then looked at their playoff rotations, basically those 3 teams were remarkably close in skill, factoring in, injuries. The Warriors aren't 100%, which is a shame. I would have loved to see this team, do a Moses Malone 4-4-4 for this, playoffs. Wasn't going to happen with the Spurs and Thunder playing like they are, but I would have loved to see them full strength. But Curry's clearly not healthy. I think we were talking very first season. Bogut and Festus clearly aren't healthy, and
Yeah.
that's leading to more small ball. But we've kind of pointed out they actually have a
More
really
on that
good,
later, but
yeah.
yeah.
They have a really good team top to bottom when healthy. Iguodala, is amazing. So this team when fully healthy is amazing. This team hasn't been fully healthy in the playoffs. And so to kind of what you're saying, sorry, not to what you're saying, but those top 3 teams, the Warriors not being healthy, the Thunder playing their top of rotation more, those 3 teams were amazingly strong. And when you compare them to anything the East had to offer, including the Cavaliers, they were a stronger team on paper. And don't forget the Cleveland Cavaliers fell twice to the Raptors. So I don't know why people are surprised when you have 3 juggernauts fighting in the West, and the Cavaliers take 6 games to finish off the Raptors in the East, why they would be shocked that, when they came together, that the Warriors did better.
Right, and they were big margins, right? They were blowout games, those first 2 games, but still, compared to other outcomes, maybe 1-1 throughout those games, or the Cavs winning both of those first 2 games. All those outcomes, I think, are way less likely than the Warriors blowing out, the Cavs twice at home. So, the doom and gloom for the Cavs after those first 2 games were kind of weird to me, and I tweeted out at the time. So anyway, we're moving on to game 3, and it's all of a sudden, boom, one little game happens, and it's all the way in the opposite direction.
Do you want to hear something that bugs me about game 3 personally? And this is, I'm just never going to be happy is the truth, Brian. I'm one of the biggest LeBron James defenders out there. I think he is the greatest NBA player of all time. Just,
in the turnover era, anyway.
Well, we've had this discussion before to sort of recap to other people. Yes, Brian's right. When we look at the turnover era, which is when we have all the modern stats, when we have the 3-point line, the turnover, all that stuff. 3-point era is probably more accurate. That's 1980 on. Turnover era is like 1978 on, and then like offensive rebound era is like 1974 on or something. When you look at the NBA in the past, we're talking 60s, 70s versus now, they're not the same. A bench player in the 1960s, couldn't make a college team. We always have that NCAA versus NBA argument. A player that was legitimately in a role player in the NBA in the 60s would not make a Division I school nowadays. And that was one thing that bugged me too. Not bugged me, but when the stats were coming out, LeBron James makes 6 consecutive finals, is like the first person to start in 6 consecutive finals since like the Bill Russell era Celtics. Well, if you look at the Bill Russell era Celtics, like the NBA had like 13 or fewer teams. Like it grew from 8 to 13 teams in the Bill Russell era. There was no restricted free agent. There was no free agency. There was no restricted free agency or otherwise. The 1960s and 70s NBA was a much worse product than the modern NBA. A modern NBA team would smoke one of those teams so badly. Now, there are players from that era, like Wilt Chamberlain, Oscar Robertson, maybe even Bill Russell with some work, could potentially be good players in the NBA nowadays. I've always kind of had that opinion. A star player from any era could probably still be a star, or if not a star, good player in the modern era. But a modern NBA team would just smoke an old team. And, LeBron James is the best player in this era. And, I would argue the fact that this era is stronger than other eras of basketball. Sorry, that's just the way it goes.
They would have smoked him. Are you saying that NBA players smoke marijuana? But anyway, not to mention modern training methods too, right? They look how skinny they were back then with those short shorts. Like they were not as as well trained.
I've brought up this book many, many times, but if you read Terry Pluto's Loose Balls about the ABA, you hear about like players, smoking and partying, and then there were players who would miss a charter jet. Don't forget that they'd take like charter jets to a thing, and they would like drive for hours to get there, and then come in holding a bag of McDonald's. So it's like that's the type of that's how far the game has come. And so that's what bugs me is like when people go, well, in my day, it's like, no, your day was worse. I'm sorry that maybe we will plateau in the NBA and see where I would argue, oh, we've hit our peak and we're never going to improve. But at this point, the NBA has just gotten, in terms of strategy, conditioning, quality of player, quality of competition, has just gotten better and better. So you're not going to really sell me that LeBron James playing at the level he's at in the era he's in, he is the greatest NBA player of all time.
Oh, yeah, and everyone's back on board after that one game, Game 3, and it's doom and gloom for the Warriors. I was showing earlier this video with, the ESPN crowd. And don't get me wrong, these are smart guys, that we like most of the time and usually say good stuff, right? Ethan Sherwood-Strauss, Amin Al-Hassan. I don't have the sound on right now for this video, but what they say in this video is what we were talking about before the show, which just killed me, which is that the Warriors made a mistake they should have answered putting Richard Jefferson into the starting lineup by benching Bogut and going small against that lineup. And that just killed my brain. There's so many problems with that statement.
Well, so sorry, I went off on this long rant about era versus era, but the point I wanted to make is in Game 3, that was not LeBron James taking over and winning. Obviously, his double-double with 6 assists, everybody's going to think, oh my goodness, LeBron James willed this team to victory. But here's what I want to point out. LeBron James' true shooting percentage in that game was 56.7%, which is pretty good. But if I don't know if you've got LeBron James's numbers up, but if you look,
I'm going to get to that in a little bit. Yeah, we're queued up, Dre. We're queued up.
It's nowhere close to LeBron James's normal performance. His 11 rebounds, absolutely good, but his six assists aren't anything special when you factor in that he got 5 turnovers. And then when you look at other players, right? J.R. Smith goes 5 for 10 from 3. Your boy Tristan Thompson, who actually got minutes, gets 13 rebounds and goes 5 for 6. Richard Jefferson, who's a billion years old, goes 4 for 7, gets 8 rebounds. Kyrie Irving goes off. It's like that game wasn't won by LeBron James taking over. That game was won by by 5 players that we would not expect to play over their heads playing over their heads.
No, here's my point. So Jefferson did play relatively well, right? But we shouldn't have expected it. He's in his mid-30s. He's been average players all year. It's ridiculous for them to say that they they should have changed. One of the best teams of all time should have adjusted their starting lineup based around Richard Jefferson. Come on. It's Richard Jefferson we're talking about.
We this is repeat time. We've said this back and forth all the time, Brian. But when you talk small, we hate the concept of small ball, big ball, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
It's play your best players. And if the other team, and again, Richard Jefferson's blowing my mind with how he's playing. I mean, he's playing really well these playoffs, whatever. But I was just going to say, if you alter your strategy as a matchup just based on their size instead of matching up good versus bad, that's where you've made a mistake. And because that's the point. That's actually way harkening back right when the Warriors started, taking off. was when they lost David Lee in the playoffs, and the Denver Nuggets went, well, then they're not playing David Lee, they're playing a smaller player. They were playing that out of necessity. So the Nuggets played a worse player to
Corey
match,
Brewer, yeah.
yeah, to match up with a smaller lineup when the reality is, you know, the Warriors at that time losing David Lee was such a huge boon to the Nuggets if the Nuggets had kept playing their bigs.
All right, so let me just finish this up, though. So there's two problems with it. First of all, what they're saying is not the reality. The Warriors actually did go small. Bogut only played 12 minutes. He pretty much didn't play at all after, the beginning of the game. Azili didn't play at all, really, just a few minutes. So, yeah, the Warriors did go small. Can I
ask a clarification on that? Because you told me this earlier. What's the health situation of Festus and Bogut? Is this a wanting to play them more but can't because of health or intentionally not playing them?
They're hurt, but they're able to go. Bogut played 30 minutes twice in the OKC series. Games the Warriors won. But, yeah, so not only did what they say not happen, they actually got what they want. The Warriors went small, and it failed miserably. They got destroyed on the boards. Like you said, Tristan Thompson and LeBron both had, mid-double-digit rebounds, and the Warriors got hammered by 20 rebounds. So, yeah, I don't know what game they watched or what stats they looked at. The Warriors did go small, and it didn't work. So I've got a problem there. And, okay, then now let's look at the title of this article here that he actually wrote, Showed Stress, is, if Warriors can't count on Curry, what can they do? So the Warriors can't count on Curry after one game. And then there's also this Neil Payne article we were talking about, too. Let's look at that. What's wrong with Stephen Curry? Well, he's hurt, and he's had a couple of bad games. It's sample size. I mean, I know these guys have deadlines, but these are just bad takes. Come on.
Listener, I can't tell you how, exciting this is to me. Normally, I'm the one that's, super riled up about this stuff. It is awesome to see Brian this riled up. And I 100% agree. Yeah, that always bugs me when a player has one bad game and you go, can they bounce back? And, this is a place where, again, baseball fans seem to understand it. Just because a great batter, just because Mike Trout strikes out 5 times in one game doesn't mean you don't keep him 4th in the rotation the next game. I've got one annoyance about Game 3, and I've got a lot of thoughts on this, Brian, so we can decide where to go on this or go to your topic next.
Yeah, no, just to finish up what I had on Game 3 is, let's go to this Rob Mahoney article on SI.com titled, Addition by Subtraction, Cavaliers' Success Leaves Kevin Love in Limbo. So because of this one game, Kevin Love, who's got a concussion, just sucks, and the Cavaliers were great for starting Jefferson. This one game decides everything. That's just crazy to me. And
well, actually, that's I'm glad you brought that. That makes me happy because that's what I wanted to discuss. Is Kevin Love is really fascinating to me because if you look at Kevin Love's last season on the Wolves, he has just not been anywhere close to that since coming to the Cavs. And I feel a lot. We've talked this a ton over the last 2 years. A large part of that is team construction. This team didn't really, if you were going to sign Kevin Love, then the other players you signed were very questionable. If you have Kevin Love on your team, why do you have Mozgov and Channing Frye and J.R. Smith and Tristan Thompson? I could maybe see 1 to 2 of those players, but all 4 of those, you're basically kind of getting redundancies with players not as good as Kevin Love, but who, are still going to take minutes or shots or rebounds. So that's what's fascinating to me is Kevin Love, I don't really think fits in on this team. But the annoying part is my solution would not be to bench Kevin Love. It would be to start looking at these other players who have deficiencies. One thing I'm not sold on, but everybody keeps repeating, and maybe you're a better judge than I am, is Kyrie Irving really that bad at defense?
It's weird. I mean, I don't know. He was good in defense in Game 3, but not in 1 and 2. It's all these comments are, what have you done for me lately? That's all this analysis is about.
Oh, by the way, that's got to be the title of the show, Brian. What have you done for me lately? I know it's a callback to what Eddie Murphy back in the day, but that's oh, come on, really? You're not excited about that as the title?
Well, yeah, it's pretty good. You're right.
All right. I don't know. You could. Listener, Brian usually names the show when he posts them to YouTube, and I was just copying. So I'm most excited to see what Brian is excited about. I thought you'd be excited on that. I guess
that's good. I am excited.
I don't. It didn't sound excited to me. All right.
I'm just trying to get back on track with my rant. So keep going.
We don't. We don't need to. I mean, the lesson you're telling me, right, with all of the playoff writing is this is small sample. We can't really say much of anything. Even listener, this is something I love. So before the show, I made a comment to Brian that something that really just baffles me is that LeBron James sucks in the finals. As mentioned, if you look at Game 3 out of LeBron this playoffs, it's not anything special. I mean, he did the Kobe trick, right? He took 26 shots. That's the only reason
Oh,
why.
I'm interested to see though because he really filled up the box score. A lot of rebounds, some assists, some other stuff. I mean, it wasn't an amazing game. It wasn't bad.
Well, when I say the Kobe trick, that's kind of what I'm saying. Is Kobe? We've always said is a good player, but never that kind of top level. Nowhere close to Michael Jordan. And I'm saying that the trick, I'll put that in quotes, that Kobe Bryant did is he just took a lot of shots. So basically, because he had an average or a slightly above average shooting efficiency. The fact that he just inflated that by taking tons of shots is why people think he's great. Now, again, the only thing in this game that is truly spectacular out of LeBron was his rebounds. And I think basically he started at power. I mean, he was a power forward. So, I mean, he played 40 minutes. So he's basically an above average rebounder for a power forward. And, 2 blocks, a steal, and 2 personal fouls is good on defense as well. But, 6 assists to 5 turnovers is not good. If anything, it's like a little below average for a big. And then, his 56.7 true shooting is good, but nothing spectacular. If you were to rank all of LeBron James's games, this one is nothing special. And this is going to sound mean. When J.R. Smith gets 20 points, Kyrie Irving gets 30 points, Tristan Thompson gets 14 points and 13 rebounds, you can't really argue that LeBron James's game here was the difference maker. The Cavs as a team smoked the Warriors, and LeBron James, this sounds mean, I think he was probably like 3rd or 4th best on the not Warriors, 3rd or 4th best on the Cavaliers this game. And, obviously his 32 points, everybody's going to say he is, but, Kyrie Irving's 30 points came on 64.3 true shooting. Kyrie Irving, or 57, sorry, 57 true shooting. So Kyrie Irving was a better scorer this game, marginally.
2 blocks is not shabby either, though, for LeBron.
No, again, I'm saying it was a good game, but it wasn't an amazing game. And even comparing it to other Warriors, I keep saying Warriors because I keep thinking the Warriors, like they've conditioned me, right? I'm like the Warriors won, but no. Comparing it to other Cavs, he was not the best. He was part of a team effort, and so that's what's rough to me is LeBron James in the finals has never traditionally been spectacular. But even I mentioned that to you pre-show, and you're like, even 7 finals, you're like, that's still less than 50 games. That's still nothing.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know, like, again, this is something that I always wonder about because I don't really know how to quantify, but LeBron plays so many minutes at the end of the season, he's got to be really tired. Like, he just, especially in the playoffs, like, maybe it's a factor, maybe it's not, I don't know.
Well, I mean, I've said this before. I never ended up writing this article. I wish I had. But when you factor in LeBron James's international play, playoff play, and regular season play, there has got to be no one else that has put that much mileage on their body. I think LeBron James and Kobe, if you look at Kobe Bryant from 2008 through 2010, because that was 3 consecutive finals, and he played in the Olympics. I don't, I think if you looked at like a 3-year stretch, I think like LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, and Michael Jordan are the only people that have put that much wear and tear on their body. And don't forget, Michael Jordan in Michael Jordan's day, the first rounds were best of 3. So, LeBron James and Kobe Bryant are kind of the only 2 players in a modern era that have put that much wear and tear on their body. And, now he's up to, as we pointed out, 6 consecutive finals with 2 Olympics. No one has put that much wear and tear on their body in that shorter period of time in the history of the NBA. No one.
Yeah, and he doesn't miss very many games, too. He plays when he's hurt, and, yeah, he's just a tank. He's amazing. But, yeah, I mean, just on this game, though, we've got the box score up now from Popcorn Machine. And, yeah, I mean, that's really the story of the game, right? It's so easy to go into lineups and matchups and all that, but the Warriors shot 42%, and the Cavs shot 52%. Like, that's a really big difference. 10% in shooting is huge in efficiency, and Cavs just had more shots go in. Maybe they played more defense. I don't know. But then this 20 rebound margin, yeah, I mean, LeBron and Thompson really dominate on the boards. And that's, like, to me, the most eye-popping lopsided stat of the game. So I don't see how small ball helped them. They got killed on the boards, and their offense sucks. So it's just one game, right? Just play your best players in the next game.
And one thing on defense is always one of those things that it's been one of my pet peeves forever because I think it's a hard thing because don't forget the Oklahoma City Thunder. At one point, the Dallas Mavericks just shut them down for one game in the very first round of the playoffs, and then
Was it game two or something like that. Game
I
three?
don't even
yeah,
know.
early on, right?
The one game that they lost in that first round. But then, of course, they make the Spurs and the Warriors two of the best defenses in the NBA this season. They lit them up a few times. So the fact that the Cavaliers were able to shut down, I guess they did, right, the Warriors for one game in the playoffs, I'm like, that doesn't mean anything because even in this playoffs, we have seen one of the best offenses in the Oklahoma City Thunder get shut down by one of the worst teams in the playoffs and then carve up some of the best defenses in the playoffs. So it's like, I think you're saying this too. It's like I don't think either team has figured something out based on one game. I think it's just like it was something that could have happened. It was unlikely. Blowouts in general are unlikely in the finals. But we've had two blowouts back to back. It's unlikely, but I think people read a lot into that.
Yeah, and just kind of finally on this, on Kevin Love anyway, is Andrew Bogut's getting a lot of credit for. Let me bring this article up right here. The ESPN headline is, people are calling Kevin Love soft are idiots. And yeah, especially with all this concussion research on CTE coming out now, people are really going to call Kevin Love soft. Like, that's just crazy. Good job, Andrew Bogut, for calling people out on that.
I think it was CTE, right? Chronic traumatic encephalopathy.
Yeah, what did I say? CET? I don't know.
Yeah, I think you said CT. But one
back
thing
me up. What did I say, chatters? Let me know who pronounced it right. No, but yeah, go ahead, Dre.
I was going to say one interesting thing on that, and I've had this. I don't think most people realize what it's like to be a professional athlete. The number of people that have played any highly competitive level of sport and know your softball team doesn't count don't realize it's like if you've got who hit him in the back of the head. It was, I'm trying to remember, it was a Warrior, but it wasn't
Harrison Barnes.
It was Harrison Barnes.
Yeah.
Okay, Harrison Barnes is what, 6'7" to 6'9", somewhere in that range, right?
Yep.
And how much? I mean, I'm trying to cleverly look this up quickly, and my Control F is not working as fast as I would like, Brian. But Harrison Barnes, according to his Basketball Reference page, and by the way, no, this will be out of date because the data that's going to come through is going to be his combine data, right? Which is early in his career. So if he's bulked up at all, you've got a lot of players that are fresh out of college, so it's possible that they had a little bit of growing to do. Man, this is just going super duper slow. I'm sorry about that.
He's about 240 right now, so he's a big guy.
Okay. Gee, yeah. Okay, so you've got some physicist out there can tell us, right? So you've got a 6'7", 6'9" guy somewhere in that range. I'm trying to look it up quickly, and it's not coming through.
And the back of your head is one of the softest, part of the body.
6'8", 240, jumping up. So I don't know how fast he was running, fast he was jumping. Hits him in the back of the head. It's like, yeah, go find someone at work who's 200 pounds, not even 240, 200 pounds. Just have them run at you with their fist out and like run into you and see how much it hurts. And so
and elbows are way harder than fists. Like that'll hurt you a lot more. It's just well, okay. So here's the Bogut quote we've got up on screen for the audio listeners. I'll read it out here. You can be a hero now in the NBA Finals in 2016, and in 2021 you'll be sucking food through a straw. You won't give an expletive about what you did in 2016. So. Yeah, Bogut hit the nail on the head there.
Oh, he's like we were kind of saying the same thing last week when we were talking about if Kevin Durant should go to the Warriors or Spurs to get a title, and you were saying, well, maybe he's going to feel bad about the flack he's going to get, and that's funny. Bogut's making the same point, right?
Yeah.
We said in 20 years, no one's going to remember that Kevin Durant was a disloyal SOB that chased the title, right? No one looks back, who is it? There's got to be a title. No one looks at like Kevin Garnett as like some freaking title chaser in Boston. They love him in Boston even to this day. So to that point, Bogut's saying the same thing. He's going, playing through injury, and let's point this out. Steph Curry this playoffs has been rushing himself back onto the court, right? Remember, they had to pull him off the court. He was crying when he couldn't play after, I think, Game 3 or Game 4 against the Blazers. He's playing injured, and everybody's saying it. And what's a result? Everybody's going, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? It's like, I think if you're injured, it's fine to take it off, and it kind of sucks that the media might cover it wrong. But I love Bogut for this. Bogut gets I didn't have him on my shout-out list, Brian, but he definitely gets a shout-out for that because he's making the point. The media is going to forget that. In not even 20 years, in 5 years, 2 years, they will forget it completely.
Yeah, no, Rob Mahoney, they're not better without Kevin Love. He's much better than Richard Jefferson. Sorry, despite that one game.
This
But
gets well. I mean, like I said, this gets really interesting to me because I think a lot of the good things Kevin Love can do are neutralized on this team, and that's just a shame to me. Do you have any more rants? Let's go to that first because I have a lot to say there. But if you've got more rants, I want to hear more Brian rants.
no, I mean we can talk. I'm pretty much done for now. You can get into
Sure.
that. Yeah, you can get into that.
All right. So here, I want to compare three teams. I was debating making this an article, never did, but had a lot of thoughts about this week. So I want to look at the Warriors, the Bulls, and the Cavaliers, three teams, because the Warriors and Bulls at this point, I think, qualify as dynasties. If the Warriors win back to back and put up six, even if they don't win a title next season, if they put up 60 plus wins, which even if they are stupid and re-sign Harrison Barnes, although it could work out, I've got a lot of back and forth thoughts on that too, Brian. But if the
He was
Warriors
good last year, just not this year.
yeah, and then there was injury. We keep bringing this up. There's injury concerns, etc. So if the Warriors make back to back titles and 60 plus wins and go deep in the playoffs next season, I count them as a dynasty, just like the 72 win Bulls that won a three-peat with Dennis Rodman. Dynasties are rare and hard and are it can be about good team construction, but so much of it is the right players being in the right place at the right time. And that happened with both the Warriors and the Bulls. And while we can look at both of those front offices and credit them with being good front offices, maybe we've given the Warriors a lot of flack about, was it Lacob or another owner?
Yeah, Joe Lacob, the primary owner, and he's also the chairman and, runs the team basically. Yeah, the light years ahead comment that cursed the Warriors after he said it.
So he had an interview, and he made a comment about them being light years ahead of the rest of the NBA. It's hard to call them light years ahead when they're winning by inches to get to the finals, but what are you going to do? This Warriors team, right? We've talked about this a lot. Well, they're here because Steph Curry, who was a player they didn't draft, the current management didn't draft, got injured in his third year of the NBA. They're here because they dumped salary at one point in the past, which after a bunch of bounces, if you look at Draymond Green's, the path of Draymond Green's second round pick to the Warriors, it's like two salary dumps with second round picks being thrown around getting them. Him coming to the league. It's Andre Iguodala, who I was reading, I think with Bob Myers. I was reading, it's Bob, right? Am I mistaken there?
Yeah, Bob Myers, their GM. What you're going to say is he almost didn't get the deal done, right? The agents got it done, and he almost gave up on the deal.
It's true, but he even pointed out that he didn't really. You've told me this before, and then these have backed it up. It wasn't like he actively targeted Andre Iguodala and did his damnedest to get it. It's Andre Iguodala and his agent came up to the Warriors and said, Iguodala really wants to play for you. Can you make it work? And he said, I'll try. And, it basically ended up with him begging the Jazz in a move. I'm so pissed that the Nuggets let that through because I think it was Randy Foye we got back was terrible. So mad at that move. But, it was like he wasn't supposed to be there. Like the special players that make this Warriors team work were a lot of happenstance. And the 72 win Bulls and that three-peat with Dennis Rodman, that was Dennis Rodman falling into their lap. He wasn't their first pick. He was like their 10th pick, but he fell into their lap at the right time. The NBA changed the rules to shorten the three-point line, which just happened to work into the stars that the Bulls had, because they ended up with Jordan, Pippen, and Rodman. And then, they'd also picked up Tony Kukoc, I think, and Steve Kerr. The players that they had collected were kind of out of necessity, and then the rules changed to be a benefit for those stars. So, these teams happen by kind of some magicalness that is way more outside of the control of the GM than we think. So getting back to the Cavaliers, LeBron James tried to manufacture a team. That's what everybody's saying, right? I think GM LeBron James is what everybody's bashing. And the reality is this team isn't really fantastically constructed, and I have a lot of thoughts on that. But the point is constructing a magical team that wins 68 plus wins. I would count the Celtics too, but the unfortunate part about them is they didn't end up being the dynasty we'd want because of injury. It comes out to these magical teams, the Bulls and these Warriors are a magicalness that happens out of a bunch of things bouncing the right way, about the right players being healthy at the right time. And I feel that the Cavaliers, aren't amazingly constructed, but the point is that's really hard to do because no offense to Kevin Love, I don't think he would have been LeBron James's first choice if he could have picked any star to play with. I think LeBron James trying to make a quote unquote super team, he picked Kevin Love because that was a star who was available that the Cavaliers could trade for, but I don't think he would have necessarily been LeBron James's first choice. So I think that's the rough part is I think people think that it's a lot easier to construct amazing dynasty teams than it is. And I don't really know where I'm going with this. I kind of just wanted to think outside. It's like when people look at LeBron with the Cavs and say, "Well, it's on him if he can't win." It's like, no, making a team like the Warriors is a really special, really hard thing to do. It only happens once, maybe once a decade, if that, if we're lucky. And then it doesn't even necessarily stay together. Like I said, the Celtics was an example of this happening, but it wasn't even able to get two finals. It was only able to get to, or two titles. It was only able to get to two finals. You can only get one title because of injury. So if you're a Warriors fan, you're lucky with what you're getting. It's an amazing thing. And for those of you that are bashing LeBron James for not being able to make the same kind of thing happen, it's not easy to do this.
Yeah, and I mean, we're splitting hairs a little bit, but I kind of agree with you. I'd say the Cavs' front court has been pretty good. Kevin Love, when he's not hurt, has played pretty well, and as is Tristan Thompson and LeBron, right? That's a pretty good front court there. People always bash Love's defense, and Irving's for that matter, like you were saying earlier. The Cavs were a better defensive team than the Warriors this year. They were one of the best defenses. So with those two guys playing all those minutes, can they really be that bad of a defensive team? Thompson and LeBron are great on defense, but I don't know. It feels like a bigger problem, for me anyway, with the Cavs is their backcourt takes a lot of shots, and they're not great shooters, really. Irving's okay, but he's probably not as good as their front court guys. And, yeah, I don't know. It's hard to call a 57-win team bad when, they're still just down 2-1 and could win this finals for all we know.
Just to clarify, by the way, the Cavaliers were 10th in defensive rating this season.
Oh, okay.
The Warriors were 6th, and the Spurs
I'm wrong. They fall off, I guess.
But that's what's interesting. To your point, before Irving was back, the Cavaliers were a top 3 defense early in the season.
Oh, okay.
And have kind of dropped. And I mean, I think to your point, it gets kind of rough to say who's good or who's bad at defense. We've talked this a lot. Defense is a team activity. And so I always get a little annoyed when someone points to individual players because it's like, just like certain players can't shoot threes or certain players can't shoot free throws or certain players can't pass on offense, players can have defensive liabilities that the team can work around. And it's just, if you've got multiple players with defensive liabilities, it might become a problem. But I think it gets really annoying when you point at Kevin Love's defense and say, we can't have him on the team. And it's like, teams have played around players with bigger defensive liabilities than Kevin Love.
Yeah, they won 57 games, and of course the Warriors won 68 or whatever. It's hard to, talk too ill of either of these teams when they're in the finals, and had great seasons. So anyway, I mean, just so on your last point, kind of about if Durant should come to the Warriors or not, and here's my theory about this anyway. I think if I can kind of reverse engineer the machismo of the NBA, I think it's about, who's the alpha dog, who's the man, and it's their team. And if you're a star, you have to have a team that's your team. You can't join someone else's team, right? So the Warriors are Curry's team. That means Durant would never join it because... So your example of the Celtics, right? Garnett went to the Celtics, and he didn't get any flack for that. Well, I don't think it was considered Rondo's team, really. It was just kind of an okay team. So when when Garnett went there...
It was totally Pierce's team.
Yeah, okay, I guess Pierce was already there. So, okay, maybe your example does hold water, but did it become Garnett's team?
That was what everybody said when the Celtics happened. That's what everybody said, is that everybody put aside their egos. You had Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, and Ray Allen, 3 bona fide stars. We're going to leave Rondo out of the mix, but those 3 bona fide stars did, according to everybody else, put aside their egos because they all wanted a title. And, one thing that people pointed out, this is interesting, when you form super teams, targeting older players is risky because of injury and age, which is what happened to that team. But one thing that people have kind of pointed out is the reason that team worked was because instead of being young guns, and, Curry is still relatively young, Durant is still relatively young, these players were like, we've done it all. We've gotten the All-Star games. We've gotten the All-NBA teams. We've gotten the accolades. The only thing we don't have is a title. And if we want a title, this is what we have to do. And so that is I actually 100% agree with your point about the machismo and that potentially impacting Kevin Durant. Although we said this a lot, who can say about what stars want? Because don't forget, Chris Bosh after LeBron James left was basically like, man, it was really rough on my ego to not be the primary
Yeah.
ball guy. And you look at it and you go, you got two rings out of this. You are a first ballot Hall of Famer now because of LeBron James on this team, and you are still looking back at LeBron James taking five of your shots and Dwayne Wade taking three of your shots a game, kind of like
Ridiculous.
angrily, and that to us is fascinating because Chris Bosh didn't lose out on pay. He got the same pay he would have. He didn't
He
lose
got a
out.
max deal on the
He got
Heat,
a
right?
max deal,
Yeah.
right? He got the max deal. He didn't lose out on pay. He didn't lose out on All-Star games. He made All-Star games with them. The only thing he lost out on was he wasn't allowed to shoot as much per game, and that like really impacted, which is, that does say a lot. I think you're 100% right to like the mentality of a lot of NBA players.
Okay, I like all your points here, so I'll try to revise my theory a little bit. And so let me ask you
No, I,
this.
I think your theory was 100% good. I
Well,
agree.
I think the Celtics counteracted a little bit because, yeah, Pierce was already the man there and it's his team. So then they put their ego aside. Because the counterpoint I was going to make is, well, it was Wade's team right on the Heat, and then LeBron went in there, and then LeBron got scorned for being a carpetbagger, right? Because he went to Wade's team to win. But what was the Celtics were kind of like a borderline playoff team with Pierce before Garnett and Allen came there, right? How good were the Heat with Wade and no LeBron and Bosh? Were they
Well, remember they
advancing?
made the playoffs the year before, and I think they did well in the first round. So I think it was the Celtics and the Heat. I would actually qualify strength of team about similar. The only difference being the Celtics had injuries to Paul Pierce, and as a result, did the Spurs cough tank mode.
I've got nothing then. There's no rhyme or reason to who's acceptable to form a super team and who's not. But
No,
listen
no,
to this, Kevin Durant.
think
Come to the Warriors.
I think the answer is what we've been saying, which is there is a machismo and an attitude in the NBA about what players are willing to do, and that does impact how players join teams or stay together. One of the, we praise, I think, 30 for 30 every other week. If you haven't watched the 30 for 30 on the Orlando Magic with Shaquille O'Neal and Penny Hardaway, it's a must watch. It's amazing. And that's what one of the funny things is that franchise, which never really took off, but everybody thought was going to be the next big thing, kind of fell apart over ego because it was Penny and Shaq arguing over whose team should it be, or who should get more credit for the team, and all this stuff. It's go watch it. It's fantastic. That mentality totally exists, and when it's can players put it aside to play together, and so that's one of the big questions for Durant is if he wants to go to the Warriors, is he able to put aside his ego to play with them? And who knows? You're pointing this out. There's no rhyme or reason. Kevin Garnett worked on the Celtics. Chris Bosh, worked in that they got titles together, but didn't work in terms of him being happy on the Heat. So who's to say what the situation would be with Kevin Durant and the Warriors?
And I think what all the commenters pointed out, and us as well, I guess to some extent, is right that he will stay there one more year. It just benefits him financially to sign a 2-year opt out deal or whatever it was. So yeah, I think he'll be on OKC next year. The year after is going to be the interesting one for Durant. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's all I have on the NBA Finals. I don't know if you have anything more. But one thing I will say, speaking of 30 for 30, Bill Simmons and one of the top 30 for 30 directors, I forget the gentleman's name, are rumored to be about to embark on a Andre the Giant documentary. Are you ready for the Andre the Giant documentary?
I heard about this, and that was like one of the reasons that the WWE really pushed to get a Ric Flair documentary because they're like competing. I don't know, stuff is weird, but yeah, you kidding me? All right, man, Andre the Giant
There
documentary.
he is.
Am I ready for an Andre the Giant documentary? Of course I am.
I want to see Arnold Schwarzenegger, Wilt Chamberlain, all those cast of characters with Andre the Giant.
Audio listeners only. I am holding up a Funko Pop Andre the Giant figure. So that's that there. And then what I'll say is, the story behind that was funny. I went to a comic convention, and the person sold it to me. I looked at it, and they said it's only $10, and I said, They said might be gone, and I said, all right. So really good salesmanship on their part. And yeah, Andre the Giant, one of the few. Everybody messes up my name and calls me Andre instead of Andres. There's the S on the end. That's why I go by Dre. It's capitulation. I say, fine, you can forget the S, but you're not allowed to completely mess up my name. It has to be a nickname I've decided on. But Andre the Giant, one of the few Andres that I'm cool with.
Oh yeah, it's going to be good. I'm looking forward to it. So do we want to hit up the Spurs real fast, or what do you think?
Oh
What do you
yeah,
want to
sure.
talk
Why
about?
why don't you hit up the Spurs? Maybe we'll talk a little draft. Then I'm okay winding down.
Yeah, yeah. This is kind of like a shout out, but Alex Kennedy on Twitter says the Spurs have explored moving up in the first round per sources, and the internet goes crazy. That must mean the Spurs have another Kawhi Leonard picked out. So we'll see what the Spurs have brewing in the draft. Be scared, NBA. Be scared.
One thing that's still really interesting to me about the Spurs, and I don't know, I mean, it seems funny to me when we talk about small ball and defense and all that. I'm still shocked that they didn't ever let Boban out in the playoffs. It seems kind of bizarre to me. Per minute, he was great, and it seems odd to say. I'm sure lots of commenters will say, anybody that listens to this when we put stuff up will say, well, he's not really equipped to play more than 20 minutes. He's not effective enough on defense, which is the scheme they want. If you look at his production per minute this season, he was freaking amazing. And I was really waiting for him to kind of get let out of the bag in the playoffs. And, for all of our talk, that was one of our points against OKC, that they did go big ball. They did play Enes Kanter and Steven Adams. Enes Kanter is a player that's had he's bad at defense thing thrown in his face. But apparently, if you play Enes Kanter next to Steven Adams, he's fine at defense. So I was kind of surprised Boban never got let out of the bag. I really think a front court of Boban, LaMarcus Aldridge, and Kawhi Leonard could have been something special. And so, maybe a little bit of the shine is coming off the Spurs. Maybe the Warriors are catching up. Maybe they aren't
I
the
have to
best.
say, Dre, Greg Popovich's biggest fan, Arturo, even rolled over on him a little bit about Boban. But then again, Arturo's also Boban's biggest fan. So he had to pick between
But
Pop and
why
he picked
would I
Boban.
mean all of the people that love Boban? It's we've said this forever. This was the Draymond. This was the point about Draymond Green. This was the point about Kevin Love. This was the point about James Harden. These are all these players that came off the bench and per minute are amazing. And we go, oh my God, they're amazing. Give them minutes. Why are these stupid coaches not playing them? And everybody goes, they can't. And then Kevin Love gets let off the hook, and he's amazing. He's putting up Moses Malone like numbers. Draymond Green gets let off the hook, and he's amazing. He's an all star.
Drummond is another example.
Drummond's another example too. Although his was a little interesting. I think he was young and they were trying to develop, and that was a stupid plan, but was a plan. So yeah, you got all these players to do it. So Boban, we're all sitting here, going. Everybody says, well, it's just limited minutes, and go, there are so many players in limited minutes that have gone off the hook when you give them the minutes. So, and when you're starting to get smacked around, and Tim Duncan looked old. Tim Duncan looked really old against the Thunder. It's like, man, just let him off the hook, see what he can do. And we're gonna have to see what happens next season, because they have his restricted free agency rights. But the question for the Spurs is going to be, and this could be interesting if they think they have someone in the draft, is do they match the offer and just spend their cap on either letting Manu come back if he wants to, and re-signing Boban, matching an offer, and then finding someone good in the draft? Or are they going to clear up cap space? They could let go of Boris Dio, Boban. If Tim Duncan retires, they could clear up some cap space and try and go after someone. So that'll be really interesting to see what the Spurs do in the offseason.
I hope they keep the band together. They still had a pretty good year despite losing to OKC.
Pretty good is an understatement.
Yeah, they had one of the best years of all time. Let's say that they had an over 10 SRS, right? Simple rating system based on their margin of victory.
It sucks so much. The West this season. I mean, we are lucky. The Western Conference playoffs this season was just an amazing thing to have these three great teams together. And it's I've heard this comparison made about like Oscars before, where you have years where the best picture goes to like a movie that's pretty good, and you're like, it was an okay movie, but the field wasn't strong. And then you have years where I think Goodfellas is an example. There are lots of Oscar movies that lost in like heavily stacked years, and you just
who did
go,
Goodfellas lose to?
I don't know. I'll try and look it up, but Best Picture nomination. And if someone in the comment section wants to. But yeah, I'm just saying there are, movies that, are in really strong years that, don't win Best Picture, and we can't really fault them. It's kind of the same this year. The Thunder, the Spurs, and the Warriors are all three championship caliber teams that in the right season would have actually not only just won a finals, like rolled over the finals. And this just happened to be the year where everything is as strong as it was.
Yeah, it's weird. The West was a lot weaker this year, but those three teams sure weren't. It makes those Cavs 57 wins even more impressive, with the East kind of rising back up again. But yes, we'll see. I'm sorry you aren't as hyped for the finals as I am, Dre. It's resuming tomorrow, Game 4 at Oklahoma City. I'm stuck in the last round at Cleveland. And then, of course, Clegane Bowl coming up in Game of Thrones, potentially episode 10. Gonna be great.
I've had this happen to me a few times. Arrested Development is an example where there is something that I know I should like, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And I watch it and it just doesn't do anything for me. So I know, like, OKC versus Golden State and Golden State versus the Cavs. These are two series that I should be more excited for, and I don't know. Obviously it could be, kid coming up, and I just have so much. I've been traveling for family and so much other stuff on my brain. And I just haven't been as psyched as I would, and I feel I'm actually going to feel sad about that in a couple months when I look like when we hit the winter of the off season, and there aren't any trades going on and there aren't any signings going on and the draft is over, and we just have this that 2-month period of nothing happening. I'm going to look back and be like, did you realize how great the finals were? The conference finals and the finals were, and that you were kind of just not paying attention. And I feel I'm going to regret that in the future. But currently, I'm just a little more apathetic than I would think I would be. So,
well, we've got plenty of draft talk coming up, and of course, you've got several articles in the works that will be good to unveil after the finals.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think I'm good. I mean, on the draft, I'm just going to be interested. I do want to shoot one other thing out. I think I was seeing a comment that the 76ers are interested in trading Noel Okafor for potentially Jeff Teague. And if that happens, I'm going to laugh so much because I think Jeff Teague cost $8 million a year and was a free agent. So I'm going, all right, so your plan was to draft a high pick and wait a few years and then trade them for a player you could have just bought for $8 million. So it's going to be even more validation for the Portland Trail Blazers model that we keep hyping. And to be fair, we don't necessarily think that the Portland Trail Blazers are like a smart, savvy team. We just think they had one offseason that represented what you can do and what more teams should be doing. And that, the 76ers, I'm going to watch very closely, and I hate to be mean. I really want them to keep being a train wreck. I'm a horrible person, but I don't want the Kings and 76ers to figure things out. I want them to continue to fall on themselves repeatedly so I can laugh at them.
Yeah, boy. It's sad. I mean, those 76ers fans, I do feel bad for them because they got the worst of it. They got the bad years of the process, and now they've got the Colangelos to bury them even farther.
Oh, it's awesome. It's great. It's amazing. I'm so excited about it.
So did you want to talk this Bill Simmons coin flip article at all? You got that on the script.
Oh, I did figure this was just worth coming up.
Okay.
Just as a throwback, and I mean, by the way, this is way late in the show. Sorry, Brian. I copied this. I had a link that Brian will show to an article we wrote back
now.
in the day.
Yeah.
So Bill Simmons a couple of years ago said that in the playoffs where Dwight Howard and Derrick Rose were both injured, that the eventual winner, who I believe was the Heat, should have an asterisk next to their name. And then I made the point that basically, if you look at every finals, every playoffs, there are random injuries that happen. Chris Paul this year is an example. Steph Curry this year. If the Cavs win, you can't really point to the fact that Steph Curry wasn't playing at 100%. It's not a problem. Someone pointed this out. I forgot about this entirely, Brian, that Klay Thompson got a concussion in Game 5 of the Western Conference Finals last season. And actually, they didn't do as much concussion protocol or whatever, and that he did not play well the rest of the playoffs. Klay Thompson, one of the Splash Brothers. Klay Thompson and Steph Curry are, by the way, I have no complaints about this. They're the best backcourt of all time.
Interesting.
Oh, whatever. Come at me, bro. And anybody who brings up Isaiah Thomas and Joe Dumars, get that weak sauce out of here. That's no. Maybe if you want to count Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen as the backcourt, fine, I'll give that to you. But nah, that doesn't count there. So, Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, the Splash Brothers, best backcourt, best shooting backcourt of all time. Just amazing.
I'll give you that.
Klay Thompson was injured in the tail end of the playoffs, and of course, the Cavs had injuries too. So you get into this really weird territory where you're like, well, they were missing Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving, and you go, well, Klay Thompson wasn't healthy. So all this back and forth about health and stuff, but that's the point. The playoffs have so much randomness, so much health, so much just a game that goes the wrong way, a ref that goes the wrong way, a call that goes the wrong way, that we shouldn't overreact and say clearly the right team won. And I like bringing this up every year because I feel to what you were saying, and this is going back to our very initial discussion, people overreact to these games as if they definitively prove something.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, let me get me back. I've got your close up on there. Yeah, no, that's the whole point, and yeah, we probably will use your show title. I think that's true. What have you done for me lately, Kevin Love and LeBron? And maybe that's got to be an article, the best backcourts of all time. We could work on that one. I just have a hard time anointing
Terry Porter. Not Terry. I said that wrong.
Terry Porter and Clyde Drexler.
Clyde Drexler,
Yeah.
I think, was the one that I had found as definitively winning. But I think Clay and Curry, at least from a shooting, obviously, obviously from a shooting perspective, Clay and Curry are the best.
It's just so one-sided, though. We have Curry, who's probably going to be one of the best of all time, and then Clay, who's like, he's above average. He's good. Great shooter, though. Yeah, that's interesting. Trying to think if there's any other good ones. Anyway, let's get to the shout-outs here.
All right. So, as always, mostly thank you to Andrew Sutton and Above the Gods. I will say, I want to throw this out. We talked comments at the very top of the hour, little passive-aggressive on my Midwestern hate. Above the Gods said he's in favor of an open comment section without Nazi-style commenting. First off, open comment section, just no, that doesn't work. The internet's proved that. Nazis mean something. Oh, my God. Don't do Goodwin's Law. If you want to see Nazis, look at Trump. But taking your comment out of a comment section or editing it is not Nazism. Sorry. But beyond that, thank you for the comments, Above the Gods and Andrew Sutton. Really appreciate that. Twitch.tv/nerd numbers. If you listen to this after the fact when we go live, follow myself or Brian on Twitter, and we'll tell you when we go live for that. That's our first shout out. I've got one, Brian. This is awesome. So What Culture Wrestling is actually making their own wrestling promotion. This is freaking incredible. So it's out in London or England or wherever, Europe. So I'm not going to be able to see it live. But they just picked up someone named Joe Hendry, who is, I guess, the people's hero. And this guy is amazing. He's they've got a couple of great videos up on What Culture, and one of the best ones is he actually beat Jim Cornette in a burger eating video.
We've got the video rolling right now, Dre.
It was amazing, and it's such a great video because Jim Cornette, Joe Hendry is shooting promos as he's eating burgers. Jim Cornette is saying stuff like, "Where did you come from?" It's amazing. So that on its own is great. Joe Hendry, I'm following him on Twitter now. A fantastic person. So Joe Hendry. Joe S. Hendry on Twitter definitely gets my shout out. And then the last one is Richard Sherman, who is actually saying he wants an end to public stadium financing. We've loved Richard Sherman. We always bring up the WWE comparison. Richard Sherman, a great promo, and I love this too. So those are my shout outs.
Yeah, and I've got a couple too. First off, Assure Illustrations at Assure Art on Twitter. And I've got their Twitter up right now, and they make all these cool NBA matchup artworks like this Warrior fighting the Cavs in the sky here that we're showing this week. So yeah, check out all that stuff. It's been a pretty cool addition to the NBA playoffs, I think. And there's even a video of drawing that piece of artwork on their YouTube channel, so I guess check that out too. Yeah, and let's see, do I have one more or is that it? No, I guess that's all I've got. Yeah, go Warriors tomorrow.
All right. Well, I mean, I didn't realize this, but they put a bunch of downtime between all of the games. So hopefully the finals are done by next week, or maybe not. Maybe we want the finals. I always root for Game 7, even if I'm rooting for the team. You always want a Game 7. So we'll see what we can say about the finals in a week. I'll be interested to see what wins. You seem, I'm amazed that Brian thought Game of Thrones beat the NBA playoffs this last week. I couldn't disagree.
Those games
more.
were blowouts. Sorry. Game of Thrones was awesome. The Blackfish is back, Dre.
Well, I'm hoping we'll see. I'm hoping it'll be more of a fair fight next week. I'm hoping it won't be so easy of an answer for you. So we'll see you next week with more Game of Thrones talk, more NBA Finals talk, maybe more Spurs rumors. Anyway, this has been the Boxscore Geeks show. If you found us not through our site, you can find us on boxscoregeeks.com. You can find us on iTunes and Stitcher as the Boxscore Geeks show. Subscribe, upvote, helps us out. We go live every week, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is usually what we aim for, usually earlier in the week, Tuesday or Wednesday, sometimes later. You have to follow myself Nerd Numbers, Brian Foster, Boxscore Brian, or Patrick Minton, NBA Geek, to find out when exactly, because it's around when our schedule allows. I think that's all I got. We'll see you next week with the finals, and have a good one.